Yeah, I did click start recording.
Yeah.
So it should be on now. There we go.
Okay. So firstly, once again, welcome everybody. This is our first community meetup for the year, and I'm very happy and pleased to say that there's a lot of new members here, and thank you for doing this journey with us. Just some logistics around it. We are recording the session. We'll make it available afterwards and also share the slides. If you do have any questions, please either raise your hands or come off mute. This is an open forum, so please feel free to interrupt us. And yeah, so let's maybe get started. So just some things in the news. So I'm going to cover the news, and then we're going to go on to ChatOps with our guest Eldert. He's an MVP. Eldert, I'll leave it up to you to just maybe do some introduction later on. Then we're going to have Dawid's tech tip of the month. I think that's going to be huge, as well as Michael's cookbook. And then just if there's any questions on Q&A that you guys want to cover, we'll also have some time aside for that. Okay, so what is new in the news? So one of the big events that what Microsoft is hosting now is called Ignite. Ignite will happen in the month of March from the 2nd to the 4th. I would say that everybody go to the Ignite website. It's myignite.microsoft.com. Be sure to register there. There's a bunch of new technology and sessions that's coming out. As you guys can see, it is a digital event. So definitely visit the site. It's up and coming. It's soon. It's less than a month away. Make sure you mark your calendars and go view Microsoft Ignite. There's always a lot of great announcements that's coming out at Ignite. Then, yes, this is quite exciting. I've started to play around with it, but we've released GitHub for Canvas apps. And essentially what that means is that we've released a component or tools that you can take your Power Apps, Canvas apps, download that files, and then extract that into a package, so source code files, right? So what's great about this is it gives you the ability to take that Canvas apps and download it and modify it, unpack it, make changes to the source code, and then pack it back up again and maybe package that. So where is this quite helpful is think of it in a sense where you have a Canvas app and you have a DevOps practice and you need to change parameters based on maybe environment or change change code based on specific use cases, right? So quite impressive what we've done. This is quite a useful tools to unpack and repack it. And there's a little bit of a debate going on about the technology that they selected. It's still it's a combination of Markdown and also a lot of people prefer JSON. So please be sure to contribute back to the community with this project. And it's a great solution, once again, a package to unpack and then view actually what's going on underneath the Canvas apps. Then also what's new is that we've introduced push notifications into model-driven apps. So the great thing about this is that you can now send push notifications right through to the model-driven app. Also what happens is in these push notifications, the recipient can just click on the notification and will open the app on the specific record. So there's a huge update, a great update as well that I see that has been released, and sure, make sure that you make use of this. I think there's a great add in the model-driven space. The next what we have is document automation. So quite a lot of investment that Microsoft has made in document automation. And when we think about document automation, it is things like the AI Builder. For those that's not aware of the AI Builder, it's our artificial intelligence builder that we perform AI functions on top of documents. Think of it as OCR, object recognition, text to or objects to text, and the great thing about this is that you can start automating those processes. So when I take an invoice, for instance, I can scan an invoice or upload an invoice. It can go through my document process. I can receive it via email. You know, it goes through my AI builder, and then it changes that into physical text. So let's say I've got a written document and language, whatever the case might be. I can go and update records based on the documentation that is available there. Quite a useful feature. I can see this quite a lot in the enterprise, where we start do document processing, automation, approvals, those type of management things. Awesome solution. A lot of updates available. So be sure to check this out as well. Then this is probably the most excited news item and release, is that we've released our Wave 1 documentation available to the public. So what does that mean? Everything that is new and coming in the platforms like Dynamics as well as the Power Apps platform, the documentation will be available. The great thing here is also is you can opt in for these releases. So you don't have to wait until the days that they get released. When you opt in, you can actually set your environment to receive these updates and new controls and new functionality ahead of time. You could test it out and also see how it impacts you. This is a great way also to see specifically things like roadmap items that's coming down the line, and also to help yourselves and customers prepare for, you know, for those items, and even build Power Apps on top of those items. I believe that was the last of it. So I'm going to hand over, you know, to our MVP that's going to take us through ChatOps, and enjoy, guys, and I'll chat to you a little bit later.
Thank you. So a lot of new information, a lot of new stuff coming. So I'm going to talk about something not different, but something that's based on the Power Platform today. I'm going to show you how we can implement ChatOps using the Power Platform. So first, a little bit about myself. I'm Eldert Grootenboer. I come from the Netherlands. So I live in Rotterdam, and I work at a company called Motion 10. So we are based in this building over here. We are here on the top floor, 42nd floor. So normally when I would have been in the office, I would have a great view. But of course, now I'm just sitting my own at home for the last few months. It's been snowing, so I'm just looking out over our parking deck with a lot of snow. So at Motion 10, what we do is we focus on everything Microsoft, and mostly Microsoft Cloud. So we focus on Azure, we focus on Power Platform, Microsoft 365, data analytics. So basically we try to do everything around that. Now, I'm working myself as a cloud solution architect at Motion 10. I'm also the technology lead for our Azure and integration practice. So I just work with a lot of different clients, thinking about best solutions for their problems. I'm also an Azure MVP, so I like to work with community. So I've written some books, I write blog posts, I speak, I organize events. So basically, and whenever I can work with community, I try to do this. If you have any questions, if you have any remarks, you can always contact me on Twitter. I will always respond here. So just send this to me if you have any remarks or something like that. With that, let's have a look at ChatOps. So what is ChatOps? So ChatOps is about conversation-driven development. So speaking to someone or something in a room, in a team, where commands can be given to a chatbot. And the chatbot will then execute custom scripts, custom plugins to do things like code deployments, event responses, send notifications. And basically, I would say that ChatOps is an evolution of DevOps. So as you can see, code deployments, event response, these are all DevOps things that you would do. And but then instead of you doing it yourself, you just tell this chatbot, okay, go do this for me, please. So ChatOps is conversation-driven development. So really talking to the chatbot in your own natural language, so you don't have to know the exact phrases or trigger words or something like that. You just chat in your own language. You just say, hey, can you do this for me? Or I would like you to do this. And then chatbot comes back. So like you have a conversation going on. Like you tell it something, it will come back with some questions. You give the answers and get this conversation going. And at some point you can take actions by interacting with this bot. So at some point you might say, okay, please do this deployment now. Or please create a task for me or something like that. Like I said, it's really an evolution of DevOps. So basically you have all the different parts of DevOps, like you have your build, deploy, monitor, analyze. So all of these steps you can now bring into that single environment in your chatbot environment. And then through ChatOps actually do all of the steps within this whole loop. So why should we use ChatOps? First of all, ChatOps provides our users with a simple UI. So our users can be our developers, it could be our project managers, anyone that's basically working within that DevOps lifecycle does now have the same UI. So they just go, in our case, to Teams. So we are going to use Teams as our ChatOps UI. You could, of course, also use something different for this, like I know it can be incorporated in Slack and other parts as well. But we are going to use Teams today. And everyone knows Teams already in our companies. So whenever you go to company, like they are already using Teams or they are about to use Teams, basically. So they know Teams, they know how to use this. So for them, it's very easy to just have this simple UI to do all that work, like creating tasks and things like that. And so ChatOps also allows us to implement easy automation. So for example, I'm going to show you in a bit like how we are going to create a task and also going to create a branch for our pro dev so they can immediately do their work without them having to set this up themselves. So we can actually automate stuff so that our users don't have to do all these manual tasks, do all this manual labor, but can just focus on what's actually important. And it provides a lot of visibility into what's happening in your team, in your environment, because everything is basically just centralized around your team's environment. So you can see if someone is working on stuff, if they are creating tasks, and everything like that. We are going to build this on top of the Microsoft Power Platform. So what we are going to do is we are going to use Power BI to gain insights and okay, how many incidents did we have? How many issues did we have? We are going to use Power Apps as a knowledge base where we can look up about past incidents, can look at the information. We are going to use Power Automate. Power Automate is actually the heart of our whole solution. Because what Power Automate is going to do is basically just automate all those different tasks, make sure that we are going to go out to GitHub, go out to Azure DevOps, to all those different environments, and it's going to automate all those tasks for us. And finally, Power Agents allow us to communicate in this natural language from Teams and actually just talk to our bot, have that conversation going on, and work with that. So we are going to use Power Platform to actually empower our ChatOps by being able to interact in human language. So without us have to know, okay, do we need to use this trigger phrase or something like that? We can just interact in human language. We are going to automate our processes. We are going to get our data from where it's needed. So no matter if it's in our CDS or Dataverse these days, if it's in another application, we can always get to that data. We are going to rectify our environment. So we actually are going to have Azure running on the side as well, where if something goes wrong in Azure, it will actually spin up a room for us and actually tell us like, okay, there's an incident going on. How are you going to work with this? And finally, we are going to gain better insights thanks to Power BI, thanks to Power Apps. So we are actually going to have better insights in what is happening in our environment. So with that, I want to go to the first demo, because I think ChatOps is best explained through demos. And the first demo I'm going to show you is around task management. Now we all know, like we have all done this, like we have those sticky notes. You either go to a whiteboard or more preferably you just want to go to Azure DevOps or GitHub tasks or something like that. But you want to have like somewhere where you can create all these tasks and so everyone knows what everyone else is working on. So we are going to automate this. Instead of us having to write all these details, we are still, of course, going to give the details, but you don't have to go to DevOps, create a new task, give the information. We are just going to tell our chatbot, okay, please do this for me. So how can ChatOps help in this? First of all, it actually allows us to acknowledge and assign issues very easily, because we can just go to our chatbot, say, please create a ticket for me and assign this to someone. We're also going to see how we can actually automate things here. So to make life easier, we are actually going to create a branch in GitHub so that our developer can actually just start working without having to do all the plumbing himself. We are then going to see how we actually can create a pull request in GitHub and bring this back into our ChatOps environment, where we can then decide, okay, do we want to merge this or not? And finally, because this is all happening in our ChatOps environment, we can actually see that we have a collaborative logging of everything that has been going on. So with that, let's actually go to the demo. And I'm first going to do like from the user point of view. So I'm first going to go to all the steps, and then I will show you behind the scenes. So as a user, what I would do, like maybe actually I need this one. As a user, for example, as a developer or as a program manager or as a stakeholder, I might want to see, okay, what work items are open, so something like that. So let's start with that. So first, I'm just going to check, okay, which work items are open for me. And let me just grab this sentence over here. So I'm just going to ask this chatbot, okay, please get me my tasks. Now it's going to come back with like a response saying, okay, how many tasks would you like to retrieve? So let's do the top 5. So it's now going out to Azure DevOps and actually just going to retrieve my tasks for me. And in just a second, it should actually provide me, and there you go. So it now provides me, okay, these are the open tasks, and you are going to work on this today, for example. Now, in this case, I could, of course, have done this even more nicely with links and stuff like that, but more on that later, because I just want to show you now like the basic functionality. So as I can now see, okay, so I've got these tasks here. Now, as I might say, well, I'm actually missing a task. I need to create a new task. So let's go and do this. Let's create a new work item. So once again, I'm just going to talk to the chatbot. And what you will notice later on, like I want to create a new work item, or what was the other one? Please give me my task. These are not sentences I actually taught the bot. I just gave him some different sentences. And in first, these sentences like, okay, if you say, please give me my task, you probably want to have a list of your tasks. If you're going to say, I want to create a new work item, I'm probably going to ask some information about that work item. So I want to create a task, and as you can see, I can now just click on this. I can, of course, also write tasks, but I can also click on this. And now I can give this a title. So let's say, let's just go with this. There we go. So just so that we can recognize it easily later on, and then fix the README file, because I know there's an issue with my README file. Now, what's going to do now? It's going to create a task, and it's also going to create a GitHub link. So it's actually going to create in GitHub. It's going to set up a branch and give this to me. Now, my work item is 193, and if I now go over to my Azure DevOps environment, I will actually see that yes, I have now this new work item. Now, like I said, I also did this link to my GitHub. So as you can see here, I know that I need to fix the README file, and if I now just click on this branch, I can see that indeed I have this second branch over here where I can now do my work. So as a developer, I can now just start on my work without having to work to set all of this up. So if I go over here, I'm going to fix my README file. So as you can see, it actually says ChatOps here instead of ChatOps. So I can now just change this. I can then commit this back to my branch. Now, normally, of course, I would do a lot more work, like I would probably create an application or I would do some other tasks. But in this case, just fixing the README file. So I'm now done. I fixed the README file. So I'm now going to say, okay, I've done my work. I'm going to create a pull request because I now want this to, of course, to go to the main branch. So as a developer, I would just say, okay, please create a pull request. Actually, 1 second, I need the other one, this one. It sees that I've updated my README file. So I'm going to create a pull request. Now, what this will do, this will actually send back a notification to my Teams environment. If I go back to my Teams environment, and it should bring this over here. Let's just give it a second because it might take a second. Or it's over here. Actually, it's over here, sorry. So the other one. So it has given me like, okay, we have a new pull request. What do you want to do with this? So this might now be like a program manager or someone that's like, okay, let's just have a look, or maybe the lead developer that sees, okay, I'm now going to, I can view it, like I can just click on view, I can immediately see like what has been changed. I can see the different commits that were made, the files that were changed. Like you can now just easily see, okay, what did we actually do here? And can then decide either to reject it or to merge it. In this case, we are going to merge it. We are going to say this is okay. And this is now going to merge my pull request, and now my pull request has been merged. So I can now switch over back to, sorry, this one. And as you can see, indeed, my pull request has been successfully merged, has been closed. So I can now just leave this branch, and now my work here is done. So that was the flow like from the front end. So now let's have a look at what's happening behind the scenes for this. So we started with that, getting my tasks from Azure DevOps. So what I did, I asked the question, please get my tasks. As you can see over here, please get my tasks is actually not in this list. So this is my PowerVerge agent, and these are trigger phrases I provided. So as you can see, it is all around tasks, of course, but it's not the actual sentence, please get my task. So what happens when I go to this, Teams and I tell this, like it will check, okay, which bot are you trying to trigger? It says, okay, you are trying to trigger this bot, and it will then go to those questions. So how many tasks would you like to retrieve? I provided that number, and now has this as an amount. It then went out to Azure DevOps, and then it started Power Automate. And if you go to this Power Automate flow over here, so there's this one. So this is triggered by that PowerVerge agent, and it provides that amount that I just gave as an answer. It's going to initialize certain variables, and then it's actually going to go out to Azure DevOps. So this is all no code, like it's just very easy for me to implement this. I just have some different Azure DevOps actions over here. So if I just look at my Power Automate flow, I can just add some Azure DevOps class here. And as you can see, I can create a work item, I can queue builds, I can update work items. So this is one, actually I got to get query results, this one. So I just have provided a query, and this query, basically I can just say to this query, please give me an X number of work items. Now I get the work items that are assigned to me, and then I just got back that result from Azure DevOps. I'm going to select the fields that I actually need, because I get a lot of information back around who's the owner and who has last worked on this. I'm just interested in ID and titles. So I just pull that information out. I create a nice HTML table of this. And finally, I return the values to my Teams environment. As you can see, no code needed at all. It's very easy to set this up, and just gives me that nice response over here. This one. So it just gave me this nice response saying, okay, these are your work items over here. So this list, it just gave me this back. And like I said, I could, of course, have included some more information in my Power Automate, like might also have selected like the link and stuff like that, and then gave that back all the way. Also, in this case, I just want something simple just to show you the basics. So this is how we started our ChatOps experience already. So this is already ChatOps, me interacting with my Azure DevOps environment, getting back to the task. Now, next thing I did was say, okay, I want to create a work item. So a little bit more advanced. But once again, I just said, okay, create a work item for me, or I want to create a new work item. Once again, it's not actually in this list, so it also inferred that, like, okay, if you want to create a work item, I probably need to start this flow. So it's asked me some questions. So it's first of all, what type of work item do you want to create? And then there were these three buttons that I showed you. And thus, because I made multiple choice options here. So it just created buttons for these two choices. It asked me for the title, it asked me for the description, and then started another Power Automate flow. And this flow, once again, I get some information, so type, description, and title. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to create a work item. So the work item type, that could either be bug, task, or the third one. It provides me my title, my description, and I think that's the ones. Yeah, so that's everything I needed. It's then going to check, okay, what type of work item are you going to create? If this is an impediment, then you're done now. If it is not an impediment, I will actually, so if it's bug or a task, I will actually create a new GitHub link for you, like a new branch. And so once again, there's no code involved here. I just have like an out-of-the-box connector. I can go out to GitHub. I'm going to get my main branch. I create a new branch based on that main branch. I call it to the name I provided over here. And then I update my work item to say, okay, please now paste also the link to that branch. And finally, it went back to my chatbot saying, okay, here's your work item ID. And that's what I actually got. Like I got this branch over here to say, okay, you can now use this branch for you. Now the final part I did, so I now have my branch in GitHub, I could update my code, I could then create a pull request. And so when that pull request came, it actually provided back to my team's environment. And that's because in GitHub I have set a webhook. So I have this webhook over here for this one, so that calls out to, I'll show you the link, actually, no, I cannot show you the link, but basically this link just provides points to my Power Automate. And so that's the third one. So there's this one. So it's actually this link over here that's it calling out to. And just provides information. And because I know I will always be looking for pull requests, I just get out that information. So just get out the information for my pull request, like the URL, title, body, stuff like that. And then going to post out to teams. So instead now of waiting for something to come in from teams, it's actually going to go out to teams, like saying, okay, something happened and here's the information. Now I created an adaptive card for this, and adaptive card basically allows me to design my own card. So let me actually just copy this code so you can see what this looks like. So as you can see, just JSON, but basically what this card does, it allows me to say merge, view, or reject, as we just saw. And then depending on what I click, like if I click on view, it will open this URL with my pull request URL. If I do the reject, then it will send reject. In my case, I set merge, so it's actually going to do so to show another card, and that's the card where I had to go give in that comment. And then finally, it would say OK and give this back as a result. So that's what happened over here. So it sends the card to my team's environment, and finally I get back a response saying either reject or OK. So if I got back a reject, it would have updated my pull request to close it, to reject it. In my case, I actually said, okay, this is okay. So it merged my pull request, it gave that comment back, and it finally pushed that notification to say, okay, your pull request has been approved and merged. So that's my first demo, and as you can see, ChatOps actually allows me as a user to just basically do all my work in this Teams environment. Then my developer at some point gets like a notification, hey, you have a new task. He can do the work in his IDE and stuff like that. At some point it comes back to my Teams environment like, hey, someone has created a pull request. I guess manager can then say, okay, this is okay, I have seen it, continue. So this means that instead of me having to go to 5 different windows for different tasks, I now have just one single window where I just go to my Teams environment and I tell there what I want to do. So next we are going to see, okay, we can now create our task, but what if we want to create some resources? So maybe this developer wants to have a virtual machine, or someone else wants to have like a web app, or maybe a storage account or something like that. How am I going to do this? Because I want to empower my users on this. So as you probably all know, like if you are in an old environment, like where there's an old environment where Agile is really not there or stuff like that, like it can take some time to get resources. Now, if you're lucky, you're already on like Azure or something like that, and it will take maybe hours to days to get resources. If you're unlucky and you're like still where they have their own data center, it can take like days to weeks to get that hardware for you. So what we are going to do is we are going to work in Azure. So that means that we normally would get like hours to days, maybe depending on our operations department. We are going to bring that to maybe minutes. So what we are going to do is actually empower our users. Just say, I want this type of resource. Here's my information. Send out the notification to my manager and then come back like, okay, here's your resource. So what are the advantages of this? First of all, it allows for much quicker allocation. Because instead of having to create a ticket, waiting for someone at the operations team to have time to pick this ticket up, then coming back to me like, okay, you are asking for a virtual machine, so I need this, this, and this, and this information. I send it back to the operations team. At some point, they might have time to say, okay, I can now create this for you. And that's like after a couple of hours or days, I will come back to me like, here's your new virtual machine, or your new database, or your new storage account, or whatever. It gives me some increased transparency because I can now actually just see what I can create. I can see who's creating things. My manager knows what's being created. So there's a lot more transparency around this whole resource allocation instead of having this black market. Like if you know the right guy, you can get it in hours. If you don't know the right guy, it will take you days to get his resource, that kind of stuff. It actually places the user in control, because the user can just say, I want a storage account, I want a virtual machine. He immediately gets all the questions that he needs to answer. And then he just gets this new service like in a couple of minutes. The next second part of this, like while maintaining governance, is also very important, because my operations team wants to know that there's maybe like Bastion enabled on my virtual machine, or I'm using HPS on my storage account, or something like if I have an API, it must be backed or fronted by API management or something like that. Like they want to make sure that everything is on the governance, on the security. So they don't want to just say, okay, any user can just go to the portal, click something together, and we will put it in production. Because that's not how you want to work either. So you want to have this maintained flow with everything under security, under governance, but still place that user in control. And finally, it actually allows my operations team, my developers, my users, anyone to just spend more time on important tasks instead of having to wait, having to make all those checks, having to execute those scripts. So we are just making much more time to be spent on important tasks instead of menial tasks. So let's have a look at this demo. So what we are going to do, we are going to go to my ChatOps environment, of course. We are going to go to my team. And now I'm going to say, okay, I want to create a new resource. So anyone that's in this team can just say, I want to create this Azure resource. I then get an option box, like saying, okay, what kind of resource do you want? Like virtual machine, a database. In this case, we're going for a storage account. Nice and easy. I'm going to create a storage account, and it will then come back like, okay, you want to create a storage account, I need some information of you. So what will be the name? Once again, easy to recognize. We're also going to create a container, so let's also call this. So I'm now just going to create a storage account and with a container in it. Now for a virtual machine, of course, I would have some different questions, like it would be the virtual machine name, maybe which subnet, maybe, yeah, you name, maybe like which image. But you get the idea, like depending on what type of resource you are answering different questions here. So I'm going to submit this. And so it's now coming back to me like, okay, thank you for your input. So what's going to happen next is actually it's going to send out a notification to my manager saying, okay, a resource was requested. So let me just grab this over here. So as you can see, it's just an email that has been sent to my manager. And my manager can then see, okay, so you want to create a storage account with this name, this container. Do I want to approve this? Well, yes, you can have this. I mean, a storage account doesn't cost that much, so you can have this storage account, no problem. In case of like a virtual machine, he might have to look at, okay, what size of the virtual machine are you asking? Like if you are asking for a G, like a G machine, those very expensive ones, I might say, well, but let's not do that if you can just use like the A machines that are much cheaper. In this case, I'm just going to say, yes, you can have this. So it's now going to start provisioning my storage account. So while that is happening, let's go behind the scenes again. So we started with saying, I want to create a Azure resource. So if I go over here, so this is my second demo, and here we have this for a selected message. So this is also using adaptive card. And as you can see here, the adaptive card is basically just this drop down that we saw with the 3 options. So, and basically what you saw, like I had that sub context menu, and what you saw there was create Azure resource, and if the menu was a bit bigger, you'd actually have seen this entire name over here. So it just uses the name of your Power Automate flow as that action in that context menu. Now, what then happens when I select that context menu item, it show me that card, like what do you want to create? Then initialize some more variables. And then it's going to check, okay, what are you actually trying to create? Like I said, like for a storage account, I have to set some things and probably different things, like I need a different card definition. So next up, we are going to use another adaptive card to ask for that information about storage account name, storage account, or container name. Now, if this would have been a virtual machine, I would have to use a different card, of course, because for my virtual machine card, I would probably have things like sizing, admin account, stuff like that. But because I'm now using a storage account, I'm using this adaptive card where I just say, okay, I want to have the storage account name, and I want, actually over here, I want the storage account name, and I want the container name. And I'm also going to use an ARM template, which will be used later on for doing actual deployment. And the ARM template I'm going to use is the storage account ARM template. So this has been created by my operations team. They maintain this. And I just need to know I need to have this specific template. I then use the card definition from here. So the one where I ask for the name of the container and of the storage account. I use that card definition and I send it back to the team where this actually came in from. So I'm going to look at, okay, which team did it come from, which channel, and I'm just going to send back that card to that same channel. So where it was asked, it will also respond. So when I gave the information, it said, thank you for your input, and it's then going to go to the next step. So in this case, it's going to parse the input because I want to know, like, once again, for a storage account, I have different information than for a virtual machine. So when I go send that email to my manager, I have to know, okay, what type of resource am I working with? In this case, I'm working with my storage account. So it's going to get out that name and container name. And it's then going to set a variable that's basically just the information about my resource. So type is storage account, name is the name I provided, container is the container name. It then sent out that email. And in this case, it sent out the email. It knew which user this was coming from because my user is known in Teams. So I can just get that information. It's going to say, okay, this is the resource information. And I'm then just have this yes or no option. I can also make some other options, like I could add more options in here. In this case, I'm just going to say yes or no. Finally, when that user responds, it will come back like if this was a no, then it would have gone here. It would have posted a reject message. But in this case, I said, okay, yes, you can create this. So it then creates or updates my resource group. So it actually makes sure I have a resource group in Azure. So I'm just using this resource group over here. It's going to say I'm deploying. So that's the one we just saw, like it's provisioning my resource. And then it's actually going to start my deployment. Now what I do here, I use an ARM template. And so it's ARM template, in this case, your storage account. And I have some parameters that I need to pass in, like my containers, my names, and my tags. So if I go over here, this one, actually, I might first show you this one. So this is my ARM template, and I said, like I said, this will normally be set up by my operations team. And here I want to show you, like, there's things like, do you want to bypass Azure services in your ACLs? Do you want to use HTTPS traffic only? Do you want to have encryption on this? Like this kind of information, my operations team knows, like, we always want encryption, we always want to have HTTPS only. So this is important. Now, if you have your users create this in the portal themselves and then push to production, chances are, if you have 10 storage accounts, all 10 of them will have different settings. Some of them will miss these security features. Some of them will be more open to everyone. Like, there's just a lot of things that you can actually go wrong here. As you can see, I'm also creating my blob service, and I'm finally creating this container. And all of this is just done with the same template. So I just submit this one template, and then in the end, it should, let me just go over to Teams first to show you that it actually should have said, like, yes, there we go. So it told me, like, your deployment has finished, your resources are available. I can now just click on this. It will bring me to my portal. It will show me, like, okay, here's your storage account. I can open this. As you can see, it says, where's my name? Storage account, ST for storage account, then my name that I provided. And then I have this unique name. So I just use a unique name for my resource group to make sure that I can just always deploy, because it actually calculates a unique name from this. So because your storage account has to have a unique name, so you have to be careful with that. If I go to my containers, I have my container over here, and now I could start uploading stuff in here. So once again, this was very easy for me as a user. I just, like, for my user, I just provided, what do I want to deploy? What is my name for this? It goes out to my manager and I'm done. Like, as a user, I don't have to know about what security should I set up. I don't have to wait for my operations team to actually have time for me. I don't have to go to a lot of different tickets or something like that. I just, in a couple of minutes, have my complete VM or my complete storage account or whatever I need, and just very easy. So just make sure, if you do this, you have, like, this nice repository for your users where they can just create this for themselves. As the operations team, they make sure that everything is up to code according to the right governance, to the right security. and then you actually place your users in control. So we have now seen how we can work with Azure DevOps, with GitHub. We have seen how we can work with my Azure environment to say, okay, create resources for me, and all by empowering my users to just have like these simple tasks that I can give, and then have this lot of control for them. Now, what we are going to do, and this is the last demo, so what we are going to do in this demo, we are going to check how we can do incident management. And so incidents are also always a bit hectic. So whenever an incident occurs, it might look something like this. Like people are panicking, like what's happening, looking up, okay, what do we need to do for this incident? Have we ever had the incident like this before? Who's on standby? Who knows this specific service? Like there's often just lots of confusion and a lot of chaos going on. So ChatOps can actually help us to speed this up. So first of all, ChatOps can actually react to your environment and then bring in the right people and get acknowledgement of them like, okay, something is going on. Please acknowledge that you see there's an incident going on and you're on top of this. It can then bring in the incident team. So it can actually look up, okay, which resource is having an issue. Like if my database is down, I will probably need other people in there than when my logic apps are down or when my network is having issues. So depending on which resource this is, depending on the time of day, I might have to bring in someone that's on call, or I might just say, okay, I'm going to bring our DBA in, or I'm going to bring our network expert in. I can just bring in the right people all together and create an incident team for this. So they have their own environment where all the information will be about this specific incident. I place them there and then I have them acknowledge like, okay, we are working on this. By using the automation, I can actually speed up things for those users as well. So instead of someone having to do that whole, like sending out emails, making dashboards, keeping everyone updated, I can now just have like tell my chatbot like, okay, we have found something, here's what we found. And then the chatbot can like update the dashboards, send out emails, make reports out of this and all that kind of stuff. So I can just automate a lot of those manual tasks that normally actually require someone like going around all the people and no one actually being able to focus on the incident, but they have to answer all these questions. Now we can just say, okay, I found something. I'm going to quickly tell my chatbot what I found. And then the chatbot is going to make sure that everyone knows about this. And finally, we are going to capture all that resolution data because there's a lot of data in this channel going on, like in this chat going on, saying, okay, I'm looking into this. I'm now going to do this. Hey, I found something. If I change this, this happened. So we have a lot of information that's going on in this team. And that's often lost normally when we have closed this incident because we just throw away the team and then also all information is gone. Now we are actually going to use ChatOps to make sure that information is captured and that we can then use it next time this incident occurs. We can actually use this data to see what happened last time. And that way have a faster resolution. So what we are going to do, I'm going to switch over to my Azure environment. Let's close this one. And so in this Azure environment, I have a logic app. Now, for those that don't know logic apps, they look a very lot like Power Automate because actually Power Automate is built on top of logic apps. So you have the same ID like with connectors, stuff like that. But in this case, I just have a very simple logic app because it's one that all basically says, if you send in status of success, then I will do okay. If you send in status of not success, I will terminate myself with an issue. Not something you will probably build in production, but for this demo, it's perfect. Because what I'm just now going to do now is I'm going to send in this trigger over here. I'm going to call out to my logic app endpoint, and I'm just going to send in this failed status. So I send this request, it was accepted. If I now switch over to my logic app, I go to my runs, I refresh this, go to my runs over here. As we will see, it received this success object, like this failed object, sorry, and therefore it went into my terminate shape and terminated with received an invalid input. Now, what's going to happen next is because of my logic apps, I of course want to have some monitoring and stuff like that. So what I did on my logic app, I added an alert. And if I go to my alerts, so what I have is I have an alert. Whenever my total runs failed is greater than 1, it will trigger this alert. And what this alert will do, it will actually call out to my action group. And this action group, I have another webhook. So I got one to request bin, but this is what I care about. Like I have a URI set up with the webhook to my Power Automate. So basically what this will do, it will just, whenever this fails, it will take a couple of minutes. So I'm actually going to trigger this manually myself in just a second. It can like take 3 or 4 minutes for this to fire. But when it fires, we actually call out to my Power Automate flow and trigger my Power Automate flow saying, hey, something went wrong. So like I said, I'm going to do this manually. So here we have my second call. In this case, I'm going to call out to Power Automate. And what I'm going to do, I just grab this alert schema from a previous alert. Like this is just my the standard alert schema that will be sent out by Azure Monitor. There's some information there about what environment. And what I want to show you is this one over here. So it actually tells me that it's my logic app workflow with this name that has gone wrong. So it just tell me, okay, something went wrong. This logic app failed. I have information about which metric, stuff like that. It will just tell me, okay, something failed. So if I go over to my, actually, I first need to send it, of course, because otherwise it won't fire. So I send this out. It's now being sent out to my Power Automate flow, and as you can see, it was not accepted. So if I go over to my Power Automate for this, it's this one, I believe. Yep. So once again, we just have this endpoint. So this is the endpoint that my Azure Monitor will call. It has the information about severity, monitoring, blah, 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 about which resource this was. All the information I just showed you, basically. We are going to set up like another couple of variables, and then we are going to list records. So what we are going to do is we are going to go out to Dataverse and get the resource owner for this specific logic app. If I go to my Dataverse, in my resource owner table, I have this resource, the logic app I just showed you, and it tells me the resource owner is this person. So it has some information about the resource owner ID, the name, and the email. So I now know, okay, so if something happens with this logic app, I have to call out to this person. I might also have multiple people. In this case, it's just one. So what I'm going to do, and what this is going to do is call out to my Teams environment. It's going to use that email I just had, and it's going to say, okay, there's a problem with your resource. So let's actually have a look what that looks like. So as you can see, I indeed have mention over here. So I can now see that, hey, I got an update, and it's telling me, hey, you have received an alert. So I have received an alert on this resource. I'm registered as the owner, and now I do something. I could ignore it. Like I might say, well, we knew about this because something went wrong on our network or something like that. It's already been fixed, so ignore it. I could just notify the team, like saying, okay, we know something happened. We are monitoring it, but there's no incident yet. Or we could create an incident, and that's what we are going to do now. When we create an incident, we are just going to say, just do this one again. When I create an incident, it will actually start doing some things for me. So what it's going to do is going to create an environment for me, channel. So I've now got this incident channel over here. As you can see, it's actually called out to me. So I'm now here. It added me to the channel. So it's got like you're the resource owner. It might also look at, okay, who's on call. So add them here as well. Then it might go look at, okay, who are the experts on this service, all that kind of stuff. In this case, it's just me because this is my own environment. I just have myself in here. But I now have to acknowledge this. So when I acknowledge this, what it will do, it now knows, okay, someone is looking into this incident. It goes out to my general channel, and this could now, in this case, just a general channel, but this could go out to like emails. It could go out like to dashboards, all that kind of stuff. In this case, I'm just saying, okay, we know that something is going on. We are investigating. If you want information, this is the channel we are in, and we'll keep you updated as needed. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to do my investigation. So I'm going to investigate like investigating. At some point I might say, okay, I found something. And at some point I might want to say, okay, I know what the issue is. And so before I go do that, let me switch back to my Power Automate environment. Because what I'm going to do next is like, okay, I found something and I want to let the business know. I want to send emails, I want to send to teams, I want to send to those dashboards. I want people to know that we found the issue. What I'm going to do is use another logic app. And actually what you will see, like this is how it looked like before I created my incident. Now if I refresh, I should have two new Power Automate flows. So I have the status update and this archive channel. So the status update, what will happen? This will look for, there we go. This will look for a certain channel message to be posted. So it's looked at my incident channel that was just created. So that's why I actually create this Power Automate, because I don't know the channel name before actually the incident occurs. So I actually have to create my workflow as well. So more on that in a minute. But what this will do, it will actually check for my settings. It will check for this command, so bang status. Whenever it sees this bang status, it will then know, okay, so you want to create the status. So it's then going to create an adaptive card, and we'll see that adaptive card in just a second, but it just asks me for some information. And we'll then use that information to post this to my general channel. So if we test this, I'm going to manually do this, because otherwise it can take a little bit of time, like can take up to 30 seconds to do it otherwise. So let me just say like this. Actually not there, I should do it over here because it doesn't listen to the replies. There we go. Oh, it's now running, so it should now give me some information. Okay, so I got a new message. So like I said, it first creates me another adaptive card. I can see, okay, do we know what it is? So in this case, I found the issue. So I can now say issue found, and I can then say something like DNS, because it's always DNS, right? So I can then submit this. It's now submitted, and what it does now, it sends this out to my general. Like I said, in this case, I just sent it out to one channel, but it could go out to 100 channels. As the person that does the update, I just had to fill it out these two fields, nothing more. Power Automate is now sending this out to all my different channels, making sure my dashboards are updated, making sure my metrics are updated, and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do next is actually show you how I created this flow over here, and also the archive one. So we are moving back over here because we were just here, like I could now take this action like create the incident, notify team, or ignore. So I created my incident, and what happened, it checked, okay, what option did you select? So if I selected create incident is one that we are going to look in just a second. If I send notify team, it would just have send out notification to my team, to my general channel, like, okay, we are aware there is a situation, but we are just not going to do anything. If I would have said ignore, it would have done nothing. But I said create incident. So what it did, it created that incident for me. And that incident contains my date time format, and it creates that comment so I know actually, okay, which incident is this that's going on. I then got that mention token because, like I said, I want to make sure that my user is actually in this team and actually acknowledges like, okay, there is something going on. So I then asked for the acknowledgement, and this was just like, okay, I just the one button acknowledge. I just can click that one button, and then it will know, okay, you are now working on this. It notified my team, say, okay, we know there's an issue with this resource. We are working in this channel. And here comes the interesting part. So what we are going to do now is we are going to use Power Automate to create Power Automate. So for Power Automate, you can actually, you have your, just check if I have I think it's called Power Automate here as well. So actually, oh, here we have the Power Automate Management. That's the one that you need. So Power Automate Management. I don't know why it's not showing up here, but there we go. So this is everything you can do with Power Automate from Power Automate. So as you can see, I can create flows, I can delete flows, I can create connections, I can list connectors. So there's a lot of stuff I can do actually with Power Automate. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a flow definition, And so for those that know Logic Apps, this will look very familiar because this is just the Logic App language. If you are not familiar with Logic Apps, don't worry. What you can do is actually create one of these flows just in your environment, and then do the list flows or list, I think it's called list flows from the Power Automate management. It will go to your flows and you can get the definition from that, and then you can update the definition. So as you can see, there's a couple of different things here, but what's important, like I'm going to create a notification on a specific channel. So I have to know which channel is this, and that's actually a channel we just created. So that's why we are actually creating this flow dynamically, because we have that specific channel we want to trigger this on. I might have 10 different incident channels next to each other, and I don't want to have those commands execute on different channels. I also don't want to have flows around for just like general channels or something like that, because we don't use those general channels. We have specific channels for those incidents. So I do some things around, so this is the bank status that we just saw, like the bank status command. It's going to, like, I'm not going to go all of this because basically this is the flow that you just saw with those different steps. So post your own adapt card, like there's some things over here that we do the display name. As you can see, this is just my definition of that first status workflow. Now I have the definition over here. I'm then going to create a new flow and do the create flow action. I'm giving that definition I created over here, I'm giving that as my flow definition. I'm going to create some connections. So actually also within here, I also create my connections. So let me just quickly see if I can, let's see. I cannot see it so far, but in this flow, in this thing over here, there's also my connections. And then I'm going to create another one. So I'm going to create two flows because I just showed you this was the status flow. I also have an archive flow. So archive flow, same reasoning like I have this over here. I just wanted to see the over here that this doesn't have the bank status, but the bank archive. So when I do bank archive, this one is going to trigger, and I will show you that in a second. It's going to create that one as well. It's going to create connections with it. And then I'm also going to update this because I have to do one extra thing over here, and that was the one, what was this? So I think this has to do with my, yes, here's the one. Because I'm actually going to use this flow to delete the two flows I could just created. So I'm using this flow I'm in now to create two flows. The archive flow is actually going to delete those flows. So so that's why I need, because I only know my flow name after I actually created the flow. So that's why I have to do create first and then update of the same flow. And so what it's created, if I go over here, it actually created this archive channel for me. So if I open this, and I want to show you this first, because like I said, this is actually going to delete my flows. So what this does, it has this bang archive command. So it's going to just listen to my teams again. It waits for this bang archive. And when this bang archive comes in, it will get my messages from my channel. So it's going to get my messages from the channel I just created. It's going to filter out all the messages because I only want text messages. It's going to initialize the string variable, just empty string variable, and then just going to loop through all the messages that were sent in the channel, and it's going to append that to a string. Now I could have this made this a bit more nicer, like I might have used an array or something like that, but in this case I'm just going to do it simple. I have just a big string with all the text in there. And then it's going to create a new record. And so it's going to create a new record in my incidents table. I will show you that in a bit as well. It's going to delete my Teams channel. So it's going to delete the channel. And so this is a Teams ID. And I knew this because, of course, when I created this, I had all the IDs and stuff like that in there. And then it's going to delete those two workflows. So it's going to delete my status update flow, and it's going to delete my archive channel flow. So we are going to start this one as well. Switch over to my Teams environment. So we are now done, like we have finished everything. We have solved the issue. We have let everyone know everything is solved. So we can now say bang archive. So this is now going to kick off that second Power Automate flow that you just saw. And in a second or 10, you will see that my incident channel is actually going to be deleted. So it's now going to grab all the information from this flow, from this window. And as you can see, it's now deleted. Like it's no longer there. It's not on my hidden themes either. Like it's just gone. So it's now gone. And if I go back to over here, like you will now see, and this is why I want to show you this before I actually trigger this flow, because it has actually been deleted. So if I go back to my flows, if I refresh again, those two flows that we just saw have now been deleted and are now cleaned up. Like everything around this incident is now cleaned up. Now what I did show you is that I actually put that information about that resolution into my Dataverse. So if I go over to my Dataverse over here, you will see that I have a whole list of all different incidents over here. Now I could of course use Dataverse for this, but what I'm actually going to do instead, I created a Power App over this. So I created this Power App. And I took this Power App once again to my Teams environment. Because like I said, my Teams environment is my ChatOps environment. So I want to have as much information as possible in here. So if I go over here, I have this app over here. And I can now just look for this one. As you can see, it now has my incident. Now you could also, of course, instead of using my username group now, or my the user group name here, I could, of course, have used like things like my logic app name, things like maybe a specific text I knew that I want to look for. But when I find this, it will give me my incident. It tells me, okay, when was this? What was this? And will give me all the information like investigating, something was found, I did status, I didn't the bank archive. Like it just gives me all the information of all the text that was sent in there. Like I said, I know this is not nice to look at, like I have not done the whole like nice text layouts yet, but you will get like, if you could just make this more pretty, but the information is still the same. It just tells me all the information that was sent here. And now whenever something else occurs with the logic app, I could just like look up the logic app name, look at all those different incidents and just look, okay, what did we do last times? So we might see, okay, so last time we actually found that it was the vendor that had issues. So we are going to start with calling our vendor. Like last time, it might have taken like an hour or so to find out, but now because we have this information, we can now start with this. Oh, not that one. I want to have this one over here. Because what I also want to show you, and that's the last thing I will show you, is my incident overview. And actually, I need this one. Because what I actually did is also, because I have everything in Dataverse, I can now create nice graphs on top of this. So if I refresh my data, and so this is all still from last year, I just loaded a bunch of sample data just to show what it could look like. But there we go. I should now have 2021 as well. So if I now just select 2021, I should see, I hope to see. Actually, it does refresh the updates this one, but it does update this one. Okay, so I'm not a Power BI person yet, as you can see. But as you can see here, it tells me that there was one incident in Q1. I just have to now make sure that also actually does the update of this. But as you can see, for my manager, this now can give him a nice overview of like how many incidents do we have over the course of the year? Do we see this go up? Do we see this go down? Because everything is just automatically archived anyway, I can just use that information. I could, of course, also pull out the information about which systems are having issues, which vendors are having issues, all that kind of stuff. As long as I make sure it's in my Dataverse, I can just create nice Power BI reports on top of this. So as you can see, ChatOps also makes that whole incident management very easy for me. Because when an incident occurs, actually my ChatOps comes to me saying, hey, something is happening. I can then use that information, like I can use that Teams environment to just say, okay, create an incident room for me, make sure the right people are there, give me my status updates, do the archiving. Like as a user, I only have to basically be in that environment of Teams, plus of course, whatever environment the issue is actually happening. But I don't have to open up like 20 different systems to make sure everyone is updated. I don't have a manager sitting next to me all the time, like, what are you doing? Can you give me an update? Like I just make sure my ChatOps environment handles this for me. So with that, we're almost done. So what you have seen, like we have used ChatOps to create tickets, to get my open tickets, to do like automation of creating GitHub branches. ChatOps also helped me to do the whole assignment of resources, like making that resource allocation much faster, still being under control, under security, under governance. And finally, it actually helps me also with just managing my environment much easier, because now whenever something comes in, I can just look at, okay, what happened? It will come to my own working environment. I don't need to go out to Azure. I can just stay in my team's environment. I see something coming in. I can tell my system what to do. It will make sure everything is set up for me, and also that everything is nicely archived, nicely cleaned up once I'm done again. So a couple of takeaways I want to give you. So first of all, ChatOps is really powerful if you have like the environment that is already in the DevOps mindset. ChatOps is basically your next step to make things more easy, get everyone on board, and get automated. Because that's what ChatOps is really all about. It's about empowering your users to just do more work with less effort. So automate everything you can automate. Make sure your users can just work from this single environment and just have everything on their fingertips. So it's very extensible, because as I showed you, when you use Power Automate, for example, you can just very easily go out to different systems, bring in all those different systems into your flow. And by using Power Automate, it's also very easy to do this, because you don't need to code this. You can just use the out-of-box connectors and very easily set this up. And that's the last part I want to show you, like Power Platform just make this so easy to implement. Like I've spent like about, I would say, a day to set up this demo. Of course, there's a demo environment. I have done the same with clients, and with clients, it takes like a couple of days to set this all up, where everything is automated, where everything just comes in, and users can just use like ChatOps within 2 or 3 days. They can just start working with this, and then the operation teams and the development teams can all get on this, and you just start automate everything very easily. You have all that information in Dataverse. You have nice reports on it with your Power BI, and it just makes my life much easier. Of course, it does take a bit of a different mindset. So I wouldn't say this is just something that you introduce like on day one where you're starting with DevOps. But if you're already heavily into DevOps, this can be a very nice next step. So with that, I would like to say thank you. I hope you enjoyed the session. So thank you for having me today. If you have any questions, I will come on the Teams now. If you have questions later on, you can always contact me, my Twitter, my email, link me. So with that, I would say thank you, and let's see if you have any questions, put them in chat or just come off mute and I will answer them that way.
I just really hope that there are none of my clients on this call asking me to set up this in 3 days.
It's actually quite easy to set up. Like, of course, the first time you might take a bit longer, but once you get the hang of this, like, it's more about what process do you want to automate.
Yeah, that's very impressive, man. That is absolutely stunning stuff.
Thank you.
Eldert, it's Morné. Is there anywhere that we can actually get access to some of these things that you showcased today? Or is that, do we need to contact you in order to get our hands on this?
So everything that you see today, if you have a Power Platform environment, you can get started with this. Like I only used out-of-the-box connectors. I only use out-of-the-box experiences. So anyone can get started on this. Like it's very easy to get started. Like just if you don't want to do the whole ChatOps environment yet, like you can just look at, okay, as a user, I might want to automate some stuff for myself. So I can just have like some different things that I use daily to automate that. Like just get started on that. Of course, once you start deploying resources to Azure and stuff like that, you will need to bring like your operations team or something like that to make sure that everything is under governance and everything is under control there as well.
This is amazing. I recently had a request, and this comes from customers and partners, where the employees spin up resources, and it's difficult for them to track that. And people leave resources up and running in the cloud, and that consumes quite a lot of their run up a bill, if you understand what I'm saying. So for me, this is very valuable. Also where I think there's huge, I just see this as probably even an extension of a center of excellence. where you can govern those environments, or when somebody comes in and they do a request, or even they have to look at things like issues and management of those issues. This really makes a lot of sense, and yeah, there's amazing work. A lot of effort has gone in there. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm just looking to the chat to see. I saw already some questions, so let me just make sure I grab them all. Let's see. There's also some discussion. I just make sure I actually go to the questions. Okay. So I think the question I did see here. So it looks like dynamic flows which determine at runtime. Yes. So basically, by using that Power Automate connector, Power Automate management connector, you can just like create a flow during runtime. Like I can just show you quickly again the one I'm doing over here. So all this information here, like these are just dynamic. This is just dynamic information. Like this is the flow that I just created up here. So that information is all dynamic. Like these substrings, these IDs are all dynamic from that specific flow. I could even go further. Like I could actually just say like, because this is basically just a string that I'm building here. I can just say, okay, only at this part of the string when I have a certain condition going on, for example. Like I can make this very dynamic. And if you like, if you know logic apps, I do a lot of logic app development as well. This is quite easy. If you are not that heavy into logic apps, it has a bit of a learning curve with this whole JSON to describe your environment, your flow. But like I said, luckily you can just build it, then export it, and then bring this in. So yes, indeed, this is completely dynamically how we build this flow. So,
thank you, Eldert. That answered my question. I see, I don't think I see it, but I see there's lots of potential for other ways you can create flows dynamically based on certain conditions. Yes. So that's quite, to me, that was quite an eye-opener in having a workflow, create another workflow based on a set of dynamic conditions that are only known at runtime. And that's exactly. Quite cool.
Yes, I really enjoyed this myself as well, because it just allows me to say, okay, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I know at some point I want to create new flows. This is the information I'm going to need, and then just spin them up dynamically when I need them. And also, of course, also tear them down again when I don't need them. So I can just have like short-lived workflows.
Yeah, and that's great, because then you don't have these things cluttered all over the place. And exactly. Then 3 years later, somebody else comes in and says, what in the world's going on here? I don't know what's happening. And we don't know what's real or what's outdated or deprecated or what's still in use. And that becomes a huge issue.
Exactly. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to hand it back. So once again, thank you so much for having me today. I really enjoyed this. And hopefully at some point we can actually do this in person as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Eldert. That was absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was beyond amazing. Thank you. It just keeps on getting better and better.
Awesome. Thank you. I really enjoyed doing this. So.
Yeah, and just one last thing from my side. If people want to reach out to you, I saw that you've got a website and a Twitter handle. Can you maybe just show that again? I will also share that later on, or even put it in the chat.
Just throw it up again. Like yes, like I said, anyone can just contact me if you have questions, if you need some advice, if you're running into some issues. I'm always willing to help on this. There's one. So yeah, I'm always willing to help on this. Like I said, I love working. That one. I love working with the community, and I just really enjoy this kind of stuff where I can actually help anyone else to help them implement this.
Great, thank you once again. Yeah, I think next up is Dawid.
So for some reason I can't see the chat window, so I was actually quite surprised when Eldert now said he's looking at the questions in the chat. So I'm like, what chat? So
there's chat on my screen, so.
Yeah, I just updated my Teams before the call because I'm on the Mac today, and I don't know if, anyway. All right, cool. So tech tip for today is I'm going to have to numb it down. I don't want Eldert's demo to look boring after I do my tech tips. So I'm just going to numb this down a lot. I'm kidding.
Dawid,
right?
just while you're sharing and setting up, everyone in the chat window, I've put a bunch of suggested next community call topics. Please have a look and just give a thumbs up to any of those that you like. And otherwise, just put in the eye window any other things you'd like to see in the future. So yeah, you've got until the end of the session. So just go have a look. Thanks.
All right, perfect. So I've shared my screen, and on the screen we've got a very basic SharePoint list. And what I want to show you is how to do a patch if you don't have access to the record. And I'm going to show you a way or two ways to do that, and then just some things to consider around that. All right, so there we've got a very basic gallery that's linked to my claim demo SharePoint list. And if I now wanted to update this through a patch command, let's go and add a button, and let's go and add a input field. Okay, and we're just going to have that there, and now we're going to write a patch command, right? So we're going to say we want to patch the claim demo, not the calendar months long. Claim demo, and if you look at the IntelliText up there, it shows you that next parameter is the actual record that you need to patch. So over here, if we don't have access to that record at the moment, we have to now go and do a lookup to the claim demo database or list, and then give it an operator. So we're going to say we want to update the first one, so wherever the ID is 1, we're going to do a lookup to that, and now we're going to pass the update to it. So let's just change the title to whatever that text input 1.text is. So if we now run this and I hit this button, it's going to update the first one. All right, so there's no rocket science over there. What I do want to show you though is what happens in the performance monitor when you actually do it this way. So let me publish this. If there's any questions at any stage, please come off mute. Right, so let's actually just launch this in monitor so we can see what this is doing. Okay, there we go. So let's just wait for the play button, and then we're ready to roll. Is everybody using monitor already? Very useful for troubleshooting and performance tuning your application. All right, so the app is loaded, and it basically just got the rows from the SharePoint list. So let's clear that and then basically run this again. So let's update this with hello 2 for whatever reason. And if I now click on this button, you'll see that first of all, it now does a lookup. So it does a get rows. So it issues this command to SharePoint, and that takes 262 milliseconds. And then only does it have the record in order to issue the patch command. So if I go back to the button, you'll see in order for Power Apps to evaluate this command, it first needs to do that, and then it can actually do the patch command. So there's two commands running at this, one after the other when you click on this button. Now, in some cases, you might already have the ID. So in some cases, you would like to just tell patch which record you want to update without first doing the lookup. So that might be useful when you update large batches of data, or you actually loop through patch commands, which isn't necessarily great practice, but it could happen, right? So what I'm going to show you is an alternative to this on how to do that. All right, so let's copy that button, and over here we're just going to say with lookup. And then over here, we're going to say without lookup. Make it a bit better. All right, so what we could do is you can actually inject a record into here and just give it the primary key in order for Power Apps to evaluate. So if I now tell this thing, I'm going to pass a record to it, and we're going to say, I want to update where the ID is 1. This will actually tell the patch command exactly which record it is. I don't need to do the lookup in order to go and fetch it, and I can just patch that directly. So let's see what happens if I now publish this and then run it in Monitor again. Might need to refresh this a few times. All right, so there we go. So let's just clear the data in Monitor, and we can now, first of all, we've done the one with the lookup, so let's do the one without. So let's just say test2, and then without lookup. And if we now have a look at it, you'll see the patch command ran without first doing a lookup. It could just issue that command to the database, and it didn't need to do that first initial lookup. So that's quite cool, especially if it's on large data sets or large actions or bulk actions that you're performing. So just keep that in mind. Another little hint to this is if you wanted to create a new record, so I'm going to show this to you as well. You could now say, instead of saying, passing this the defaults and then the claim demo name, so this is the normal way you would do this, right? And now, because we're not passing it any IDs or anything, it's going to create a new record. Now what you could do is you can use a similar thing that I showed you now to create a new record by saying the primary key is blank. And this will also now tell Power Apps that it could actually just go and create a new ID or a new record. So if I run that and I go into the test, there's my new record that it just created. Right, so yeah, keep that in mind. I have found this to be very useful in some cases. So just be aware of this, and I hope that it helps you out one day. Any questions?
Dawid?
Yes.
I did not know that. That is so cool. Like, I've always done a patch and done a lookup, you know, to actually get the full record. So the fact that you can just do it based on the ID or the primary key, that's really cool, dude. Thank you. Question, has this always been there, or is this a new feature?
No, it's been there for a long time. I just realized the other day that not a lot of people know this. But it's been there like there probably like 2-3 years maybe.
Okay. That's not just the other day. Thanks for sharing.
Cool,
Dawid, can you use other fields than ID, for example, a title or whatever fields you have?
Because it needs to be the primary key for the otherwise it can't identify it. So if I go and try and tell it that I'm looking for anything where the title is something, it's not going to be able to find that because it's not necessarily unique. So if I go and say hello, that's probably not going to work. So let's update that with, let's give it.
And Dawid, it's also not specific to the data source being a SharePoint list. This would work on the Dataverse as well.
Yeah, so I'm sure it does work in Dataverse. I haven't tried it. I know it does work in SQL. Yeah, so it created a new record over there because it couldn't match that because it's not the primary key.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Robert, yeah, so basically if it can't match the primary key, it assumes that it's a new, that's what it seems like it's doing, it assumes that it's a new record and created. That's why you look for the primary key being blank, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Correct, yeah.
Dawid, maybe you can just show us again, how did you get to that analytics screen?
All right, so if you, after you've published your changes, and you can go into Power Apps, and then when you click on these three little ellipses, it'll show the option for monitor. So this is actually very, very cool, and I think this might actually be worthwhile for a session as well. Although I think we have done one, I can't recall, I think we might have. But essentially what this now does is it allows you to play the published app, and this is what I've done now, and then the application outputs certain telemetry to the monitor, and it displays it here in a user-friendly format. You can also use developer tools in the browser, but it's really obfuscated lately. So because of all of the information that it's pushing through to telemetry. So what you can also do is you can invite a user. So I can go and say, well, come and show me, I want to show you something. I'm battling with this bug or whatever this app is doing. So I'm going to connect to a user session. They're going to show me what they're doing. And then I'm going to basically troubleshoot on this together. So this is very, very cool in order to collaborate on troubleshooting an application. Any other questions?
I think that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's the amount of information that you get from this is actually staggering. So this is a very basic app now, but when it's a large app, the kind of stuff that you can see is really useful. Cool. Any other questions?
Any questions? I like that, Dawid.
All right, so yeah, so then if that's it, then I'm happy to hand over, Mike. I believe you're up next.
Thanks, Dawid. So yes, in theory, I am next. But actually what I wanted to do today is kind of open the floor and see if there's any questions on, stuff people have been struggling with, or questions just generally someone has. We can call this section Stump the Mic. And actually, I'll just pass the question on to someone else who knows it. But yeah, open the floor. Questions, comments.
I've got a few for Michael, but it's just because these things I think crosses our paths quite on a weekly basis. So the first question is that, Michael, is there anything that you can maybe talk us around, what's included in M365 and what's included in the Dataverse? I think one of the things that we get quite a lot is people sit with the investment into Office 365 and they want to start using advanced connectors, but they don't actually really fully know, what's all included. What do they get if they hand over to Dataverse, or, those type of things?
Thanks, dude. You know what I'm going to do? Because I get this so often, I actually do have two slides, which I'm happy to share. They're Microsoft slides. Let's just go here. Let's do that. Which I think are quite cool slides that depict the Power Platform capabilities you get with Microsoft 365 licensing versus kind of getting stuff outside of Microsoft 365 licensing. What's quite nice about this slide is it's not just about Power Apps or Power Automate. It's kind of like the whole Power Platform. So this is what you get with the Power Platform from a Microsoft 365 perspective, like Office 365, right? So from a user interface perspective, you'll see the top layer here. So you get, Power App, canned apps, not model-driven apps. You get Power Apps that you can build and run inside of Microsoft Teams. You get surveys with Microsoft Forms. You can have Power Virtual Agents, but as long as they run inside of Microsoft Teams. In fact, you author and execute inside of Microsoft Teams. And then from a Power BI perspective, it's kind of slightly different to the rest of the Power Platform, but you can create reports and dashboards, etc. This is slightly, I'm not going to talk too much about this because this does vary between if you've got an E3 and E5. But from like a process automation perspective, you get the approvals app. So if you're sending approvals through Power Automate, you get that application either as a standalone app that you can use called Microsoft Approvals, or it comes through as email or through Teams or whatever it might be. You get Power Automate, and there's a lot of SharePoint integration. From a data and services perspective, what can you connect to? So the key thing to know is like Power Apps and Power Automate. So these things here, kind of like what can they connect to? So primarily Office 365 stuff. So I want to build an app that connects to a SharePoint list or Planner or Teams or Exchange Online, tasks, Office 365 services. So that's typically what Power Automate and Power Apps and the virtual agents would connect to. Or standard connectors. So standard connectors are like, I think one of the Bing weather services is a standard connector. But anyway, when you connect to data or connectors via Power Automate or Power Apps, it's the standard connectors. And then what's new is Microsoft announced the Dataverse for Teams. And essentially, this is kind of like a stripped down version of the full Dataverse or the full CDS. It used to be called the Common Data Service. So it's kind of like a lightweight version of that, designed specifically for Teams. And when I say Teams, I actually mean with a team within Microsoft Teams. And so it's kind of like the step up from SharePoint lists in a way. So it's kind of like more scalable, more performant, and it supports stuff like referential integrity and a whole bunch of other things. So you can also now use the Dataverse for Teams as your data repository, but it does have limitations compared to the full-blown Teams and the full-blown Dataverse. So that's what you get with Office 365 licenses. I think what's just another one that's interesting that catches people out that only have Microsoft 365 licensing is they can't create multiple environments within the Power Platform. They just get the default one. And to create more environments, you actually need storage, and you only get additional storage when you start buying step-up licenses. So I've seen that quite a bit. So I want like a developer environment and a sandbox environment, or an environment for this department and not that department. That's something else that kind of catches people out. Something else that's not included here. And then I've got like a build out slide of that one, which is if I want to go and get Power App Premium, or I want to go and buy like specific flows, like a license to run a flow just by itself, then I can start doing these types of things. So for example, I want virtual agents that run outside of just Teams, or I want a portal, or I want model-driven applications, or I want customer voice. So those are the things that you can add on, from a user experience perspective. From a process automation, RPA is Eldert, business flows are separate. And then from a data connectivity perspective, if I want to connect to anything on premises and use the data gateway, then that's not included, obviously, with M365, as you saw. If I want to connect to the full-blown Dataverse, that's not included with M365. Neither D365 data, and by the way, this is basically the Dataverse, and premium connectors. So premium connectors are kind of like high-end third-party cloud services, Azure, Salesforce, SAP, Oracle, SQL Server. Those are premium connectors. So those would require some additional type of licensing if you wanted to create or consume apps or flows that consume any of this stuff here. So I just like these two slides. I think it's a nice way of depicting it. I hope that helps, Morné.
It does. I see Robert has got a question.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So we're trying to build a team on top of D365 with Power Platform kind of skill set. So the question that was raised is, what should we skill up first on? Because I know there's tight integration with Power Platform and D365. The question would be, if you want to do work on that, the D365 with Power Platform, should we be kind of understanding the basics of D365 and then go to Power Platform, or jump straight into Power Platform and do the D365 kind of get that afterwards? What's your suggestion?
So I'll attempt to answer that. It's the answer is both. What comes first though? So this is not really an architecture slide, although it almost is. So what you see from here is the Power Platform runs on Azure, and Dynamics 365 runs on the Power Platform. Now that's not like 100% true across all scenarios, but certainly like that's the way I see it. Like, for example, if I want to build a model-driven app, which kind of looks like a Dynamics 365 app. In fact, 2 years ago, we would have called it a D365 app.
Exactly.
Actually, what you're building that on is the Power Platform. So for me, it's like, if you're going to do Dynamics 365, you have to know the Power Platform. You have to know Canvas apps. You have to know model-driven apps. You have to know Power Automate.
So that makes the decision for us a lot easier, because we're kind of grappling with, and obviously time, you can't do two things at the same time. So what I see here is I'm going to get my guys to concentrate on the Power Platform, try to get them to do the PL900, PL200s first, and then we can go to maybe an MB900 or something like that. So I see the MB200 has been deprecated and not working anymore, and that's combining that for the PL200. So that kind of makes sense to what you were saying as well.
Yeah, for sure. And like core concepts you have to know is the Dataverse and model-driven applications versus Canvas applications, and how to build both are core concepts every Dynamics 365 person needs to know.
Right, yeah. Okay, thanks. That's a great answer. Thank you very much.
Cool.
I'm just quite surprised you had that like on hand.
I have amazing things on hand. It just happens to work out that way. It doesn't usually.
Oh, boy.
Okay, Michael, then we had another question from a long-time listening, but first-time caller, asking about that they've been getting flow limitations recently. So it seems like when flow executes, there's some throttling limits and limitations that's being applied.
Yeah, so that's actually quite a good one. We're seeing more and more scenarios like that. So basically what happens in Power Automate, depending on what license you have and what licensed account is assigned to execute the flow, depends on what performance characteristics you can expect from that flow. I hope that all makes sense. So in other words, if I have a user account that's got an Office 365 license, and that's the account that's used to execute the flow, it has certain boundaries around performance. It's, for example, and I'll show you the numbers now if I can open the article. I think it's either 2,000 or 5,000 request limits or request actions, if you want to call it that flow can use within a 24-hour period. And if you go drastically over that, the flow gets throttled. In other words, it doesn't run as fast as you would expect it to. And you will know this because you'll get errors in your flow. You'll see this. It'll say your flow is starting to be throttled because it's using more actions than it's actually, in quotes, allowed. Whereas, for example, if you assign a Dynamics 365 license or a Power app's premium license, or you license the flow on a per flow basis, it will get many, many more. And it kind of goes from 2,000 requests or action requests per day all the way up to 100,000, depending what license is assigned. And this is quite well documented on what the different limits are, but it's not just limits around performance. There are other limits around like how many loops you can go through and stuff like this, all kind of like to protect the service. So we are seeing this because in the past, Microsoft didn't implement the restrictions as much. They were more lenient, but they are starting to put kind of like take away some of that leniency. And so you will see this. So that, you know, there's two things. One is if you're hitting these limits, you want to check if you've assigned the right type of license to execute that flow, because it can significantly change how many executions that flow can use. And you also want to look at how you've built that flow. So for example, if I've got a flow that's got 40 steps in it, does it really need 40 steps? Maybe it only actually needs 20. How can I make these flows, and also just from a best practice perspective, not have so many actions or steps inside of it, because each step is an action request essentially. So if it executes through 40 steps, that's 40 action requests. And if you only allow 2,000 a day and that flow runs 100 times, that's already 4,000. So you're already over. So these are the types of things that you've got to look at. And there are a few good articles, and I'll post some in the IAM window just to go and look at around this. But it is something you want to be careful of.
And one I can actually add to that. One thing to note is it also depends on the context that the flow is running. So you could be running the flow as an application user that's fully licensed, and it gets the full 100,000 requests. But if you put it as a user that only has a professional subscription, they will get throttled to 50 across all users. So if you have quite a few flows that run, just make sure that you segment and separate out the ownership of which application is owning which flow, so that you don't hit the throttle limits based on the user interaction in the system, if that makes sense, based on the actual workflows that get triggered. Because it's all dependent on the owning account of the workflow itself.
100% correct, 100%. Yeah, so, and I popped a link in the IAM window so you can go and look at the different limits depending on what license is given to the user account that's executing the flow. The one that gives you the most is the per flow. So you actually kind of license the flow as opposed to, you know, like an individual user. France, thanks. That's, yeah, 100%.
Great. I see we've got 4 minutes left. So just a last question from my side. And please, if there is any other questions, guys, feel free to ask them. But my end of my January started very funny. You know, there was a bunch of stuff that happened. I don't know if it was just 2020 ending off and January starting, but in mid of Jan till the end of Jan, I started getting customers saying that, you know, they've got team member licenses that essentially is changing on the 1st of Feb. I don't know, Michael, if you've experienced anything like that as well.
You know, Morné, did Dawid put you up to this? Because I'm getting all the licensing.
I feel some collusion there as well.
Yeah, and France knows it, like, has had this exact experience as well. So
yeah, we've had a conversation about this last week.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll also pop a link into the IAM window, but essentially, Microsoft has a license called the team member license, which at a high level, I mean, it's been around for a long, long time. At a high level, you give it to users who are going to use Dynamics 365, who kind of like aren't full-blown users, and typically they only need read-only access to stuff in Dynamics 365. Okay, so, and if you think about it in like a modern world, stuff in the Dataverse, accounts, leads, opportunities, custom entities, properties, whatever it might be. So it's kind of like a lightweight user that doesn't work the case, or isn't a seller, or doesn't like manage the property system, or whatever it might be. And it's been around for a long time, and it had always these restrictions. but they weren't technically implemented, the restrictions. It was kind of like, hey, you should only use less than 15 custom entities, and it's read-only access to all these sets of entities. But we never enforced it. And what happened on the 1st of February, and it's been planned for a long time, but I think many of us missed the communications, is that Microsoft started rolling out, I'll call it phase 1 of the technical restrictions. And phase 1 is, if you've got a team member license, you cannot use a custom Dynamics 365 / model-driven app. If you've got a team member license, you can only use one of 2 apps. One is called the sales team member, and the other one's called the customer service team member. Something like that. I might have got the word slightly wrong, but those are the only apps. And if you've got a team member license, you try and use the Sales Hub or a custom model-driven app, you'll get an error. And so on the 1st of Feb, when this was implemented, we had all these people say, oh, what do I do now? And you basically have 2 choices, Morné. I think you've got 2 choices. One is get the users to use the sales team member app or the customer service team member app, because that's all that they can use if they've got a team member license. And customize those apps so that they can do what they used to do, but still keep in mind the restrictions on those licenses. Also keep in mind what we're not implementing the technical restriction yet of actually like writing to entities you shouldn't be allowed to. That technical restriction is not in place yet, but it will come. So just be careful of that. So that's the one option. Get them to use the team member apps. The other option is change the license that they have. And one that's common that people are looking at is switching from a team member license to a Power App license, either a per app or a per user. Because actually what a lot of organizations have actually implemented is custom model-driven apps, essentially. And so actually the per app license is probably the most appropriate. So we have some customers switching from the team member license to the Power App license. In some cases, those users actually are acting and behaving like full-blown like customer service representatives or salespeople. In actual fact, they're going to have to switch to a full-blown sales or customer service license or something like that. But the devil's in the detail. You have to look at actually what they're doing and then figure out what's the right way that they should be going. Yeah, so kind of a long answer. I don't know if that answers it, but I will pop a link in the IM window as soon as I find it, just around this stuff.
Yeah, thank you. That does. It's quite interesting because the scenarios that we ran into was customers having more than one app that's got very specific purpose, and then they have to merge these functionalities into one single app, or even customers that's not aware of the announcement, that's kind of saying that, hey, where's all my apps? I only see one in my app, one app in my environment. So just please, maybe if you're either a customer or partner, be aware of that. Like Michael said, he'll just post the announcements of that in the IM window, but that we definitely see is happening quite a lot, and especially this week. Been a busy week with those type of requests. Is there any other questions also?
I see Eddie made a comment, just sad because many business cases were built on license agreements back then. So Eddie, what the team member license still allows the same capability as it always had. It just was never technically enforced. So it's still the same terms under which you can use it, but it just wasn't enforced, and now it's being enforced, and it's catching a few people by surprise.
Is multiplexing something we want to chat about quickly, or?
Dawid, I see it's 2 minutes past 6. I think we should end the conversation now.
It's a conversation for next time.
Please, I don't want to be known as the licensing person, please.
You've already got that reputation, Michael.
I also vote for that topic as well. Yeah, I just sent a mail out to my global address list and said, if you've got any license questions, please send them to Michael O'Donovan.
Oh no.
The question you have to answer is Michael licensed to talk about licensing?
Good point. But I am like, I kind of understand the technical side of licensing, but I don't understand the commercial side of licensing, if that makes sense. So if you do have questions like around this team member stuff, if you're having a challenge, you got concerns, you don't know what to do, yeah, drop me a mail. Happy to help.
Thanks, Michael. That's great stuff.
Am I correct in saying, Michael, that your autoresponder just says buy, Dataverse licenses? That's the default answer.
You've got an autoresponder coming in the mail now.
Excellent.
Just before we close, just another reminder that there is a poll that's up and running that please guys vote. There's some great topics ahead. I think something that really blew me away today was the fact of the adaptive cards within Power Virtual Agent. So that's something I'm really interested in. And then also I see there's quite a lot of topics, there's still items to cover. But yeah, I think that it was a great session, a great start to the year. And I just want to thank everybody for joining and spending time with us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, use the IM chat window.
Much.
Just
Yeah,
scroll up and you see all the poll questions. If you don't see
I
them, just put a thumbs up.